Welcome to the Timeline course. I'm your host, Claire Chancellor, and today we are going to use the timeline process to go along your ancestral line to discover what limiting beliefs or limiting decisions did your ancestors have that has created a ripple effect and impacting you now in this now moment. When we think about the ancestral timeline and the ancestral themes, often it has to do with connection, independence, approval, and belonging. So, anytime that you have a limiting belief show up or a challenge in your world, or your clients have a challenge about the need to belong, about who they are independently from their family, or what they can do to connect and have those relationships with family at a much stronger level, then again, the ancestral timeline script will definitely give them the keys to better understand what is going on and the action plan moving forward. Have you considered how many of your beliefs, values, and your identity is shaped by those who raised you? When you reflect on your family's culture and their rules, their expectations, and their assumptions, we can get a better understanding of why they have made the decisions about what is right and what is wrong, and therefore how you need to be in this world to survive. Now, those assumptions have been handed down generation after generation. And if those assumptions and those beliefs are empowering, then fantastic, hold on to them. But if some of those limitations, or those beliefs, I should say, are creating limitations, creating things like the burnout or the obligation or the resentment in how you need to be and not being heard in the family, like the list goes on. If there's issues there, then you want to have a look at, where did these beliefs come from? Are they true? Are they serving you? Or what can you do differently? I did have a client whose relative, I think maybe like a great grandfather or somebody of that nature, had gone through the Great Depression. And from his experience, all of those decades ago, there was a scarcity, limitations around money, obviously, right, from his experience. And so, therefore, that perspective about money, got to save for a rainy day, don't overspend, hold on to all of your pennies, all of that, all of that had been handed down generation to generation to generation, almost creating like that ancestral curse of lack and scarcity and keeping everybody in that poverty mindset, because there was such a huge trauma in the ancestral past. But it was my client's willingness to put their hand up and say, okay, I am willing to do something that's unfamiliar, very uncomfortable, and really reflect on who I am. Where did these beliefs come from? What is the narrative that's holding me in place with the scarcity and the mindset of money? And then with that, of course, created that ripple effect of change. They freed themselves from all of that scarcity mindset. Now, I've used the ancestral timeline script to help people release the fear of creating something new. That person who steps out of the family's expectations to be the first person who goes to uni, or to be the person who doesn't go to uni and go and goes and learns to be a coach, or do something completely out of the norm of what's expected of them. You know, that comes with a level of fear of judgment, fear of rejection, what will people say, to be able to move in that direction. So again, the ancestral timeline script really helped create and understand the clarity of, where was that obligation to family, that burden, the the need for security, where did all of that come from? And is it true? Do I need to live to those old rules? You can use the ancestral timeline script, to release the obligation to follow somebody else's authority. And again, that can be that generational thing where the man is the head of the house and we do what he says. And it's like, well, that may have worked in the past, but that obligation doesn't help or serve me now. You can definitely use this script to be able to draw a line in the sand and rewrite yours and your children's future for the better. You can also use this script to really help have a look at those healthy ways of moving forward compared to staying in that old toxic cycle. Something like that, the women stay home to look after the children, that's the women's place to be in the house, in the kitchen, all of that. Again, you can use this script. And you can also use this script to exit the family guilt trip. If you've got issues with boundaries and burnouts and you're being guilted to help because that's what family does, again, this will free up a lot of that energy. I've used this script to help a client where she was feeling incredibly resentful and smothered by her grandmother until she did this script and recognized that her grandmother had adopted out a baby, and there was this panic and anxiety and stress about the loss of what she had to hand over and give up for having that baby out of wedlock. And so my client needed to understand from using the timeline script, going back, seeing why her grandmother made that limiting decision, limiting beliefs that were created from that moment in time where she was obligated to hand over her baby, and then therefore the ripple effect that had created with how smothering, controlling, dominating she was with her family to keep them close, to make sure that she knew where they were at all times. And so once my client got that understanding, she could approach that relationship very differently. Instead of that rigid tension being near Nana, it was more about understanding that tenderness Nana had, understanding Nana's need for connection and meeting her where she was at. And then that freed up the space for her to go and travel the world and do the things that previously Nana was holding a grip to her with. So again, just a quick example of how you can use this script. Another one I've seen where we think about somebody in the past, maybe they've gone to war, they've come back, they've become an alcoholic, they're escaping this reality, they're escaping that trauma. They've then since had a child. He grows up to need and want that connection with dad, but dad's drinking, he's escaping. And so he becomes a bit of a perfectionist and strives to push to be the best, to somehow get dad's approval, to somehow belong and connect with dad. And yet it's still met with that escapism from dad. And so that perfectionist then has a baby, a son, and the ripple effect continues of just this hustle, pushing, burnout, to follow the rules to get that need met. And again, you can use this timeline script to put your hand up and say, yeah, those old ways are definitely not working. We need to bring some healing into this family lineage, and to really put your hand up and say, yeah, I'm ready to make that change. Of course, once you make that change, you then have a new set of ideas, beliefs, and values that you pass on to your own children, your own nieces and nephews. So it really does break that generational curse of the scarcity, lack, and everything that goes with it. Can take time, but it is worth it. Now, for people who are familiar with the timeline script, as you know, the script is quite general. The client will come to you with a limiting emotion: anger, sadness, guilt, resentment, stress. And we ask the client to connect into their body. Where are they feeling that limiting emotion? And then to trust the first thing that comes to mind. What is the first event, the root cause of this limiting emotion that when we disconnect it will be released permanently and effectively? Was it this life, past life, ancestral, or in the womb? And of course, that gives us a bit of direction to go back to that exact perfect time to get to open, to shine some light, open the window, have a look at what was the reason that we have that limiting decision, that limiting emotion. Of course, we're going through the ancestral script together today. And so I need to generalize and set the intention for us to all go back on the ancestral line. So you will hear that I've altered this script just slightly. I took this particular script with a group back to when their ancestors had conformed to the mainstream. When did their ancestors dial down their intuition, dial down their natural connection to earth and their energy to conform to the mainstream? And then we got those aha moments and those lessons so that with that polarity of what it means to switch it off, dial it down, we could then energetically make the changes to dial up your intuition. So that was a lot of fun to play with this script. So it doesn't always have to be so heavy duty. You can set the intention to go back to, where did I start to do these old patterns, or the family do these old patterns with money, owning your house, your job, your travel, and then set the intention to go and explore the polarity of that to where you can have the freedom with money, the freedom with travel, the freedom with your career. So again, we're going to set the intention to all experience this timeline script together. For this process to work, I want you to think about a time where you had some issues with belonging. So we're going to set the intention for everyone to explore that connection, that belonging. Maybe you were bullied at school. Maybe you just felt so isolated and alone or misunderstood. Maybe there was that pocket of time, where you just didn't feel like you belong. Now, a lot of my clients would say, yeah, well, Earth is not home, Claire. I don't belong here. Take me back to my home planet. We may not use this particular script for that, but I just want you to get in touch with a moment in time where you may have experienced that lack of connection, the lack of belonging, people didn't understand you. Get a sense of where you're feeling that in the body. And then trusting the first thing that comes to mind. How many generations ago did your family lineage have this lack of belonging? Just trusting that there'll be a number that comes to mind about how many generations ago. So again, trusting the first thing that comes to mind, how many generations ago did your family's lineage experience that disconnect, that lack of belonging? Just noticing that there's a number that comes to mind. Now, what I want to do is to take you on a journey to travel back along your time stream, back to that moment in time where there was that lack of belonging. I'm going to ask you to concentrate only on my voice as I continue to speak. And as you sit there, ready to discover something truly magical about you, I'm going to ask you to look up so that you're looking towards those gorgeous eyebrows of yours. And as your eyes start to feel heavy, just invite you to close those eyes and just to be ready to experience that deep sense of relaxation. Resting your hands and just get as comfortable as you can, knowing that this time is just for you. Feel your whole body just starting to slow down. Feel the breathing starting to slow. Feel your whole body coming into that deep sense of relaxation. So it moves from the top of your head down to the tips of your toes, allowing that relaxation to spread all throughout your being, causing you to feel lighter and lighter. Trusting your unconscious mind, and I know you do, I invite you to float up out of your body, floating higher and higher. And as you move higher and higher, do you notice down there that beautiful tree? And in fact, it's your family tree. And while the tree stands tall, you know you have permission to explore the knowledge contained within that tree. It has so many branches. Some are thin, some are thick and healthy. But there's that one branch that gets your attention. With that one branch that gets your attention, I just want you to imagine that you are floating along that branch to where that generation is represented. What we're going to do is to discover where that negative emotion, that lack of belonging, came from and why it's held such a grip on you as a member of this family. You don't have to consciously know. However, your unconscious mind will give you a sense of that moment, of that limiting emotion, that disconnect, that lack of belonging. So floating back along your ancestral time stream there, along that branch, and moving back to an event all those generations ago, to that moment where your ancestors made the decision they don't belong. There was that disconnect. So as you're floating along back to that event, in a moment not now, I'm going to ask you to float down into that moment, to see what you saw, to hear what you heard, and to get a sense of what was going on for them that created that lack of belonging and that disconnect. So on 3, 2, 1, dropping down into that event to see what you saw, hear what you heard, and just to get a sense of what was going on for your relatives back then. So you're in that event, like taking a snapshot of your family's history. What do you notice? Are you inside or outside? Is it daytime or nighttime? Do you notice if it's hot or cold? You notice how many people are at that moment of time. What's going on as you look around and observe where that disconnect and lack of belonging occurred? Notice how your family is involved in that event. And notice, why has this rippled throughout the generations? Noticing that there's things that can occur outside of you to create a lack of belonging, a disconnect. And that your ancestors, your family members, have made assumptions, beliefs, and decisions about what can occur to create that disconnect and that lack of belonging. From that time in those history books, it may have made sense. But now in this modern age, it probably doesn't work for you in any way, shape, or form. With that information that you've gained from that moment in time, It's now time to float up. Floating right up above this event. And as you go higher and higher, looking down there and seeing that event to be so small and so insignificant. Just down, down, down there. And now that you are directly above that event, ask your unconscious mind what it needs to learn from the event. The learnings of which will allow you to let go of that emotion easily and effortlessly. And your unconscious mind can preserve the learnings so that if you ever need these lessons in the future, they'll automatically be there for you. So seeing that event down there, observing what was acceptable to your relatives, what limiting decisions they made to ensure their survival, and gaining the learnings about that disconnect and that lack of belonging. Noticing that there's lessons here, and your unconscious mind can give you those aha moments, not just for you, but for future generations. So those learnings and lessons start to make themselves known. I want you to notice that there's a colour associated to those positive learnings. Just take notice of that colour. And maybe there's that positive sound connected to those positive learnings. Breathe in that colour. And breathing in that sound. And letting that vibration, that new way, flow throughout your entire being, through every cell of your mind, every cell of your body, all the way throughout your aura, so that you can take on these positive learnings wherever you go. Imagine for a moment that you travel off to your safe place. Being there in your safe place, outside, at night. You are sitting by a beautiful fire with millions of stars in the sky, and you feel the warmth air on your face. In the fire pit, there is that flame that radiates that soothing warmth. You know that this is a powerful flame, and anything that this fire touches simply transforms and releases. As you sit by the fire, you pull out a list out of your pocket, and it's a list of all the old ways that previously held your family back. You notice all the ancestral names, the conditions and limitations that they took on board. And if only they knew what you know now. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to crumple up that page and throw that into the fire. You watch that fire transmute that heavy energy and limiting emotions, and know things have shifted as you observe that quantum observer, observing that smoke just drift off into the night sky. You feel a wonderful sense of relief. So you allow yourself to feel calm and peaceful. With this renewed energy, you know it's time to write a new story. As you sit here by the fire, allowing those new stories to be created, connecting in with a new way. And it's like drawing a line in the sand, making a decision for things to change. With that complete, it's now time to float up above your time stream, to go back to the old ancestral event. But this time, bring with you the new learnings and the new story. Floating on your time stream back to that old event, and just like pouring in that color, that sound, that vibration, pouring that in so it travels throughout all time, inviting your family to take notice of this new way, this new energy, and these new learnings. Noticing how that just starts to clear and transmute all of the limitations in all directions of time as those time streams start to shift and adjust, and observing that there's a new path forward. With that in place, I'd like you to float along your family tree, floating towards now, noticing as you observe that tree, how the tree is so much stronger, more vibrant, and healthier to support all future generations. The tree feels different to you now as it supports your future growth. It's just creating new possibilities and new choices moving forward. So before you come back to now, we're going to be thorough and explore what life will look like with these new shifts. So, one more journey here. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to go into the future, floating effortlessly and easily into a future scene where previously you may have responded with the limiting emotion, that old lack of belonging or the old disconnect. But notice that you have new choices available, new opportunities, new ways to negotiate what's important to you, new, flexible, healthy boundaries, a new sense of confidence that you're taking the lead. So as you're there in the future, just take notice of how you live up to your highest potential. Notice the positive changes and how you can impact your life with productive adjustments that you've made today. I'm always curious with this moment in time. What do you have to believe about yourself to have this outcome? So bringing in that belief, holding on to that new you know that you can't go back the old way. However, you can bring forward this new energy, that new success. And the truth is, people will come in, connections will be made, opportunities will be offered, doing new things that you've not done before. And you get to show up differently. The longer you hold on to this empowered energy, the quicker the transformations occur. And with that incredible energy in place, it's now time to come back into this moment that we call reality. So I want you to notice all of those golden footprints that led you to that future event. We're going to start to track and travel that back to this now moment, bringing with you those new aha moments and the freedom to make wealthy, healthy decisions. So I'm going to count from 5 to 1, and with each and every count, you will come back to this now moment. So on 5, feel yourself coming back to a place we call reality. On 4, expressing yourself in a unique way, locking this success into your mind, body, and soul. On 3, always knowing you can solve any challenge. And on 2, wiggling your fingers and toes, heart rate back to normal, big breath in, head held high. And on 1, opening your eyes to a whole new you. Okay. As I always say, now is a great time to grab a glass of water, go for a walk, or journal on the aha moments and the insights that you've just gained. You can obviously replay this and experience a whole different type of timeline going back to get new insights. But for now, I would just encourage you to have a look at the new choices available to you. I would check in where your body feels this sense of empowerment. How do these new insights change the decisions for you moving forward? And what are you going to do to model these changes for your future and for your children's futures? So it's definitely worth sitting down, writing that letter to the ancestors, thanking them for all the interesting perspectives that they've brought forward, and that it's now time to let that old energy go. So it is definitely worth safely burning that letter, seeing that smoke drift off into the universe, and making that promise for new energy to come into the family. So I make a joke there. That doesn't mean that you're going to bring in a baby, but bringing in that new high vibration, that wealthier, healthier version of you. So I hope you enjoyed that experience. It's a fascinating one with everything that can come up from that. I'm always curious to hear what came up for you. And with that, I'll love you and leave you and talk to you later. Bye, guys.